Welcome to the Women in Vinyl podcast with Jen DiEugenio, founder of Women in Vinyl, and contributor Robin Raymond. This podcast facilitates conversations with those working in the vinyl record industry to educate, demystify, and diversify the vinyl community.
Thanks for listening to episode 33 of the Women in Vinyl podcast. You just heard Inferno by Rosie Finch off their new record, Seconda Morte, an atmospheric journey of sludge and stoner grooves and 90s era alternative. Huge thanks to the band and friend Lay Bear Recordings for the use of the song. Check out www.laybearrecordings.com to order this and other wonderfully heavy records. Today we're joined by Allison Wolfe, who really needs no introduction, but you may know her as songwriter, singer, writer, and podcaster. She is also a founding member and lead singer of the punk rock band Bratmobile. Allison is one of the leading voices of the Riot Grrrl movement and one of the reasons we can exist today. She was a joy to speak to, and we can't wait to share this conversation with you. Allison, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me here virtually.
Yeah, you're sort of like an icon to our organization. So,
oh, really?
We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you at all. So, we're
cool.
We're very, very, very geeked.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
All right. Thanks for letting me harass you on Instagram.
Oh no, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be here. It's cool to do stuff that's with other women's collectives and things.
So like I said, I'm sure that everybody listening already knows who you are, but for those that don't, could you tell everyone a little bit about you and your career?
Okay. My name's Allison Wolfe, and I was around doing I guess I was co-founder of Riot Grrrl with other women. It wasn't just me, for sure. And I grew up in Olympia, Washington. I was in a band called Bratmobile. I sang in that band, which was my first band, along with Molly Newman, the drummer, and Aaron Smith, the guitarist. And I did a lot of other bands after. Anyways, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. My father's from Tennessee, and my mother's originally from Ralston, Nebraska, which is right in Omaha, basically. And anyways, I don't know, I have a twin sister, identical twin.
Oh, cool.
Sister, named Cindy, and she lives in Toronto, Canada.
Oh, on my side. How about that?
Yeah.
Have you guys used that to your advantage ever? I feel like
people always ask that. Actually one time we did swap driver's licenses, so that I think it was because I was on the guest list for Joan Jett concert in Seattle, but I was flying back to DC and couldn't make it. So my sister wanted to go, and we just didn't want to bug Joan and deal with, changing it. So I just gave her we swapped IDs.
That's awesome.
And so how did you get into music?
So yeah, when I was in grade school, actually, my sister and I were part of an after school program in 5th grade that was called the Music Kids. And one of the teachers ran it after school, Mr. Long. And yeah, and it was like Music Kids, all one word with a big K in the middle. And it's, you know, whatever. Anyways, and it was kind of like jazz hands and little movements. And we would do like Neil Diamond and Jimmy Buffett songs and a little bit of Beatles, I think. Yeah, it was pretty funny. So my sister and I were part of that. And I don't know. I don't think I was particularly good. She got some solo parts. I didn't. But she's actually a better singer than I am, and I think a better songwriter, but just saying. Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, growing up in Olympia. Okay, so my parents left Memphis after they finished school, and we were born and stuff. And then I also have a younger sister. She was born in Washington State. But so they drove up to the north of Washington State, and we settled in Mount Vernon, Washington. And so we were there until we were about 9 or 10 or something. And but my parents got divorced when I was like 7 or 8. And then my dad moved back to Tennessee. So, and then my mother came out as a lesbian, feminist, vegetarian,
all
folk
the things.
singer, you know, every now and then folk singer in the house. Yeah, like hippie. So that was, you know, a big change. But you know, she got custody of us kids, so that's where we were. So we stayed in Washington State, and then she went back to school. She was already a nurse and was doing a lot of innovative things. I think she helped start like a women's birthing center in the hospital up there in Mount Vernon.
That's awesome.
But yeah, she was like OBGYN. But then she ended up going back to school and kind of getting a higher degree, becoming a registered nurse practitioner. And then she started dating, I think, her teacher in school. And and that woman left her husband for my mom, I think.
Wow.
And, yeah. And then we all moved down to Olympia. And that was like 1980 or something. And then my mother started the first women's health clinic in Olympia and in the county, Thurston County. And I believe it was the second women's health clinic in Washington State.
Wow.
So, yeah. And she had to, you know, fight really hard for that. And I know she worked really long hours, and we were, you know, super broke for a long time. And she was harassed constantly. Like people were, you know, always picketing, and I don't know. And the cops were always on the picketers' side. And you know, and my mother was very out and very like, you know, didn't take any shit. So, can I say shit? I don't know.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
Please do. Please do.
But even back then, she had a really hard time securing a loan to start her business because she was a single woman. They're like, oh, we need your husband to co-sign. She's like, what husband? Yeah. So, you know, I think people don't realize those kind of things actually existed then, you know, and that's in the 80s, not that long ago, really. Well,
I mean, not at all.
And that's, you know, it's interesting. I have this BRCA1 gene, so I had recently just got a hysterectomy, and they, in certain states, you still have to have your husband sign off on it being okay for you to do that. It's wild. Yeah. And it's something that's a preventative surgery. And yet,
oh man, even up here in Canada, I mean, maybe it's your mom sounds very much like my mom, where my mom was very much like I work in a male dominated industry and I don't take any shit from anybody, and I race stock cars and like that kind of stuff, where she was just like deuces. But like maybe that's why we decided to do these weird things. But
yeah, like she was harassed a lot, as I said, but also she did, back then they didn't perform rape kits at hospitals and things, so she was also on call all the time to perform rape kits. And you know, as we know, most rapes are not reported and all this kind of stuff, and they certainly don't usually go to court and all this stuff. But my mother, if things did, she would support the woman, and she'd be there the whole way. And she would sometimes, you know, just testify in court and say, yes, I examined this woman, here's what I found. And she would get death threats for that from the men who would, whether they were convicted or not, but like,
Of course.
yeah, just it's wild. So I don't know, and in the later years when abortion doctors and stuff started getting killed, she wore a flap jacket. She wore like a bulletproof jacket to work, and she got trained to use a gun, and she carried a Glock in a fanny pack.
Wow.
It's kind of funny. And she was such a good shot, like really, because I mean, so don't mess with her, right? So I mean, I took actually that class with her, the gun shooting safety class or whatever, and it was, first of all, it's only a weekend. I can't believe how like wimpy it is. But anyways, but we did go to the firing range on the last day, and I couldn't even pull the trigger on most of the guns. Like my finger wasn't strong enough. Plus, I was a total riot girl. I showed up in my Riot Grrrl skirt and barrettes.
Totally.
And my mom was like, had her baseball hat on, was chewing tobacco, was like, hurry up, I got to get back to the game.
With her yellow glasses.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. And then,
I love it.
But then because the cop was so impressed with my mom's abilities, he ended up handing me his Glock, and he was like, try this. Because I couldn't pull the trigger. So I was like, oh, I can do this. It's like a toy gun. So yeah, so she was like, okay, I'm getting a Glock. And then she had, and the, what was it? The fanny pack, as we call it here. I know we probably should call it something else. Bum bag. I don't know. And she would pull this, it had a drawstring thing or whatever, where it would just open if you pulled the string. Yeah. And then you could grab the gun. So, yeah. So
man,
she was ready. But but I mean, it definitely taught us to question things, especially question like authority and the government and all that kind of stuff. I mean, not in the way that we talk about questioning the government now exactly, but yeah, so definitely. But you still have to kind of rebel against your parents somehow, right? So how do you do it? I mean, so we just, it's more like you kind of just take all that stuff for granted. If you're surrounded by, left wing and just cool lesbians all the time, and you have like, and women's healthcare is a right and all this kind of stuff, then you don't realize that the rest of the world isn't so much like that. I mean, you kind of know, but you don't experience it until you leave town. So anyways, but she, my mother actually died of ovarian cancer in 2000. Sadly, she was 55, so young.
Wow.
I'm so sorry.
I know, and it's like, it's just also the irony of it, a women's healthcare provider,
Exactly.
But they don't always. Well, I think with ovarian cancer, honestly, you don't catch it till it's too late, so it's not. It's not her fault. That's why you did it, right?
That's why I did it. Yep, I wasn't gonna wait and see. So.
I know, I've thought about it, but I don't know. But I mean, whatever. Maybe I should. Like, who cares?
I mean, I will tell you that the recovery was like shockingly fast. They sent me home the same day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Even in socialized Canada, like I was like, they're like, "Are you awake?" I'm like, "Yep." They're like, "See you later." I was like, "Bye."
Wow.
Later. Yeah.
One thing that she said before she died was like, don't ever let your guard down regarding, abortion and reproductive rights and all that kind of stuff. And she was like, watch, they'll chip away at it, and the minute you turn your back, they'll take it from you. And even then we were kind of like, oh, Mom, and then right after she died, like, first of all, Bush W comes in and gets to, I don't know how many Supreme Court justices he put on, but I mean, he wasn't even popularly elected.
No.
And the Florida thing, what a scam. Jeb Bush rigging the whole thing, So it's like, yeah, it's insane what happened after that. And then now I
know.
Straight up Handmaid's Tale. Yeah.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And now they want a federal, but like, they're just going for it. And you're like, this isn't the will of the people.
Right.
No, at all.
And so that's what we're dealing with, is just anti-democracy. It's like, it'd be one thing if most of the people in this country felt that way, then I'd get the hell out. But no, this is our country, and it's not your Christian right, whatever. It's not yours.
No,
right.
not at all.
and you're stealing it by like really nefarious means. It's like, no, this is awful. It's not. I don't know. And with the Supreme Court, that's a scam. They're not elected. They're there for life. And they have so much power.
Yeah.
Right.
And Amy Coney Barrett, who's not even like, she doesn't even know what she's doing, right?
Right.
Well, she's got one goal in mind, but yeah, she's a member of a cult. So you're just like, what the hell? How can these people? Well, that's exactly what Trump's team focused on, was getting judges, all of his cronies in the right places, because he knew that would be for life, and the Republicans knew that would be for life.
And women who support him and that, that kind of politics, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, you completely don't understand what you're supporting then.
Or they do, and
you just want no rights, I guess.
It makes it even worse. Yeah.
Well, or it just makes you wonder what they're supporting. Like, okay, maybe they don't want their rights taken away, but they're racist or whatever, and they want other people of color's rights taken away or whatever,
Totally.
So, but also, I mean, it's just anecdotal, but even in the South, like, well, I don't know, but Tennessee, oh, I'm so sad with some of their new laws, but my father, okay, he's a Republican. Mm-hmm. But he's pro-choice. He was a doctor. He's pro-choice, and his wife, my stepmother, is a Democrat, and she told me that she's kind of in a small town in Tennessee. She doesn't have a lot of people with her on the political side, but she told me that at the group meetings and whatever, book club and all this stuff she goes to, she was like, oh, you'd be surprised. Like, almost none of the women in my groups who usually vote Republican, none of them like Trump. And she's like, you'd be surprised how many women really hate Trump. And I'm assuming did not vote for him. But
yeah,
I don't know. But so we'll see. But yeah, exactly. It's just like I don't see how you really can politicize a woman's right over her body.
Exactly.
Like, how is that even political? And then the COVID and the masks thing. It's like, how is that political?
Right. So back when the Riot Grrrl movement was starting, what was that time like? And did you know as it was happening that it would turn into what it has become?
I think at some point, well, first of all, I was in my like 19, 20, 21, like that. So I think at that time in your life, you kind of are really self-centered, and it's like, whoa, we're the center of the world. But not really the world. It's a small world. But yeah, I mean, well, I went away to college. So I went not very far, but I went to Eugene, Oregon, and that's where I met Molly Newman, who we started Bratmobile with, and she's the drummer. And we just she was very politicized already. She's from Washington, D.C., and she would look at things more of a kind of national level and stuff, which I had never really looked at before. I'd only really thought about kind of maybe more basics or maybe just more local stuff, But anyway, so we kind of like, Reese's put it together. And we took a lot of very politicized classes and stuff at University of Oregon that we learned a lot from, and we met a lot of cool student activists in the student center, and who really influenced us. And so, but also we were musical, and I kind of brought the whole Olympia K records, the little cassette tapes that had people just singing in their kitchens or whatever, and that super DIY musical thing. So I kind of brought that to the table, and so we kind of meshed those things, and was like, well, and grunge was really big at the time in the Northwest. It might not have hit, they say the year punk broke, what was that, 91 or something? But I mean, already grunge in the late 80s was already happening. I mean, we may not have called it grunge, but I mean, grunge was definitely big in the Northwest already. And we liked a lot of those bands, but and we'd go to the shows. But we just felt like, what's the message here? And it was super macho, really. And the shows, you just kind of like, okay, now sexism is wearing flannel and long hair. Okay. So we just felt like, well, we might not really know how to play or anything, but we will learn and we have something to say. And I still think it would be more interesting than some of this shit, you know? Yes.
So, I mean, going back to when you guys were kind of all putting your collective beretted heads together, is that when the zine started too? Like, is that when you guys decided like we're going to put some of our ideas down into a little doc and get it out to everybody? And because that's kind of was a little bit of the genesis of the Riot Grrrl movement, right?
Yeah, well, we were very encouraged by people like Toby Vale, who I'd seen around town in high school at shows and stuff. And she was in an all-girl band called Doris, I remember. And those girls also skated around town. They're skateboarders. And Donna Dresch, who later is Team Dresch, but at the time she was in some bands playing bass. And so, you know, there weren't a lot of women, but there kind of were actually in Olympia. So you could see that and see them performing and stuff and making zines. And Donna and Toby both had zines, like I believe in the late 80s even. And then, or, you know, and then Kathleen moved to Olympia the summer right before or at least had been there that summer before I went away to college. So she moved there like 89 or something. Okay. And so I saw her, I remember seeing her around town, this tough girl, looked like Tank Girl, I remember at the time. And I'd see her on the bus and stuff, but also she ran a venue downtown. And it was like kind of a evergreen state college, kind of, I don't know, internship thing or something.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so she ran this cool space. So I would also go to shows there, and but we never really talked to each other into like then at the time, except for, you know, maybe paying to get in or something. Oh, I think one time I was put on the guest list, and she was so mad. And I said, "Oh, I think I'm on the guest list," and she was so mad, and she was like, "We can hardly make rent here. You should pay." I thought she was gonna kill me. So I was like, I was so timid back then, you know, I was super timid. So I was like, "Oh, okay, sorry.
Here's my money."
and later I told the guy in the band who put me in the list, and he was like, and then I found out years later when I, you know, after I was friends with Kathleen, that we were both dating that same guy at the same time.
Oh my God.
And I think that's part of why she wouldn't put me on. I had no idea. I didn't know.
Totally.
I didn't know. Anyways, but but yeah, anyways, but so once we were in Eugene going to University of Oregon, Molly and I would come up a lot, as often as we could, because the scene really was not happening there. Right. You kind of had to be in Washington State mostly, maybe Portland too, but and so we would go back to Olympia a lot, and we started connecting with Toby and Kathleen, and they were already starting Bikini Kill, and we would just have lots of kind of politicized talks at Toby's apartment maybe, or Kathleen's apartment or something. Yeah, and so they were very encouraging of us, and so they're the ones who said you should do a zine. And we were a band in theory for a long time. Actually, I remember we named our band right away, and we were telling people we were a band for probably a year before we actually ever played. And I remember Calvin Johnson from K, he called our bluff. Like, he called us and said, "Hey, I want you guys to come up and play a show in Olympia. It was Valentine's Day, 1991. And you're going to open for Bikini Kill." And we were just like, "What? We don't know how to play. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You guys come up here at least once a month bragging about your band." And then we were like, "Oh, I guess we do."
Here we go.
Yeah. Molly had taken some guitar lessons, I think, and she was really interested in drums. So yeah, we just ended up talking to this local Eugene band called Oswald 50 and Robert Christie from that band. And he gave us the keys to their practice space and said, "Have at it. Here's the days that we were there, so just go some other time." And yeah, so and then it's like, "Well, how do we write songs?" And he's like, and he's like, "Oh, listen to some Ramones records." And I didn't have any Ramones records. So I remember just being like, "Oh, I'm not going to listen to the Ramones because I want to make sure we sound different."
I remember reading this, and I was like, I wonder if she listens to the Ramones now.
Not really.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny?
Yes.
Isn't it funny?
Yes, it is.
It's so weird, but that's kind of how contrarian we were, just like just stubborn brat.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
But
Well,
so
and-
yeah, I still don't own a Ramones record. I mean, I might have had a CD that came my way at some point that someone just left it, whatever. But yeah. But do you want to know what's funny? It's maybe not that funny, but we years later in Cold Cold Hearts, probably 96, 97, we were up we would play New York a lot at the Cooler. We were almost like the house band. And I think we were late for sound check at one point, and we were right in the is it Washington Square area where the NYU is?
Mhm.
And there used to be this JoJo's that all the punks would eat at right around there. And so we would get in the van and we're cruising and we're just flying. And there's this, like on crosswalk for university students, but it doesn't have a light or a stop sign or anything. You just kind of have to be ready to stop. Maybe there's a stop sign. And all of a sudden, screeching halt. And we almost hit someone. Oh, it seemed. And it was like, oh my God, what? And there's this guy slinking across, but look, and he looks like a praying mantis. And we were just like, and I was like, wow, he is beautiful. And then we realized it's Joey Ramone.
Amazing.
Yeah, we almost ran over Joey.
Mowed him down.
You're still like, I still don't have your record.
I don't like you this much.
No, I mean, I like them, and of course, I'll listen to it if I whatever. But
you're not going to turn it off if it comes on.
Well, no, right. I just never owned it.
A lot of the music of the time was punk, and I've heard people say today that music is becoming less genre based. And so I wonder how you feel about that, and if you think that there are certain bands that are still like standing up and speaking out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the genre-based thing. Well, I guess you're right. There's just a lot more blending. I mean, I've never really been able to, it's hard to describe music, so it's hard to even say genres really. But yeah, there's a lot of fusion and whatever.
Crossovers.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. A lot of interesting things have happened. Like, first of all, like back when we started, the media wasn't really writing about alternative or indie culture that much. I mean, there were alternative news weeklies that were more in the 90s, I think, maybe later in the 90s, that were really doing, strong, and some college radio at that point too. But most mainstream media was not writing about that stuff at all. Or if they did, they sounded so out of touch, or they just hit the most mainstream of it or something. Yeah. But so I think we really did feel like in Riot Grrrl that we had to create our own platforms to have a voice, use the means of production to, you got to DIY, you got to do it yourself. Totally. So, and that's definitely why we were doing zines, to have a voice and like, well, here's what I think, and here's what I want to say, or or here's a little scene report, or here's what I think is funny, whatever,
Yeah.
But yeah, and that kind of tactile, urgent thing of zines, you have to get it out quickly, because especially if you're going to say, oh, this show's happening, you got to get out quick. Yeah, or it becomes old news pretty quickly. So I guess you have to make it more evergreen. But yeah, so I don't know. So those are the kinds of things we were doing, and what was important.
Hold that thought. It's time for an Amanda fact.
The first record cleaning machine was invented by Percy Wilson in 1965. Apparently, it was a massive, multi-step behemoth of a machine and a process. Then, three fellas, John Wright, Mike Belleville, and Pete Keeley, came together to work out how to make the first commercially available record cleaning machine, with the thought that large sound libraries, like those held in radio stations, would be keenly interested. Development took several years, and the company was so overextended, it locked its doors and folded. A mere 5 days before their newly hired sales manager, Keith Monk, was scheduled to meet with the BBC executives. Keith Monk kept the meeting anyway, and he sold BBC on this product, hopeful that he could figure out somehow to get this machine made. Interestingly, today we think of the first record cleaning machine as being developed by Keith Monk, by his company called Keith Monk Audio Limited. But there's always more to the story. And now there are tons of different record cleaning machines on the market.
How do you personalize your turntable? Maybe a slip mat of a favorite band, company? A Women in Vinyl slip mat, perhaps? Well, now you can create your own personalized slip mat with your pet's face, a family photo, your logo, and more, using Glowtronics, a company taking your gear to the next level with full-color print-on-demand slip mats. And yes, you can order just one. From cork to DJ quality, they have tons of options. Use code WomenInVinyl15 at checkout to get 15% off. www.glowtronics-store.com. And now, back to the episode.
But I have a question about, because I love hardcore, and hardcore is very much a macho, who can lift more kind of, I eat more steak than you, or in the Ian MacKay kind of version, like I don't eat any steak at all and I'm like the most hardcore person of all time. How did that intersect with the Riot Grrrl movement? Because it was kind of like at the same time, you guys were a little bit after, but like there's always kind of been an undercurrent of hardcore from the East Coast to the West Coast.
I mean, I'm not real familiar with a lot of it, but I do know, I'm friends with Alice Bagg, who's an original punk, well, LA, West Coast one. And she, we've talked a lot about this stuff, and I've read a lot of stuff she's said about it. But, I think that original quote unquote real punk or whatever was a short-lived period, right? It was like late 70s, maybe early 80s. But for sure by the mid 80s, a lot of those originators felt done, or they felt like hardcore took over and completely like, and it was like sexist, racist, violent crowds and stuff like that. And they're just like, okay, now it's white boy jockland. And homophobic and all this stuff. So
it's a weird space for me to be at, that I love hardcore that much when some of the messaging is just so problematic, but I don't know, man.
Well, I would imagine it's somewhat different now, and that you do have women involved now.
Yeah.
Maybe not enough, but it's never enough, is it? But
it's never enough. Yeah.
So I mean, what is it? There's this band, The War on Women. Are they hardcore? Would you consider them hardcore? I don't know.
I'm not familiar with them, but I will definitely check them out.
Yeah, I follow them on Instagram. I've never seen them, but I was like, I like that band name. I think they might be hardcore. I'm not sure.
They're from Baltimore, Maryland, formed in 2010. Here we go.
Yeah, they're cool. They seem cool. There's a lot of stuff like Big Joni in the UK, and they're label mates of mine now. They're on Kill Rock Stars now, and awesome. And they're just great. And I did an interview with them for my podcast that I'm reviving.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's bump the other podcast.
Yeah,
I'm in the band podcast. It started in 2017.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it. So I went back to school to USC Annenberg for school for journalism, and did like this specialized arts program. Got my master's in that. And me and one of my classmates, Jonathan Shiflett, we started a podcast for Tidal. And there was a woman, Brenna Ehrlich, who worked there and got us on board. And we did a year's worth of podcast episodes, one a month for them. And we called it I'm in the Band. And it's funny how many people confuse it with I'm with the band. Obviously, it's a take off of that, but it's being like, no, I'm not with the band. I'm not a groupie. I am in the band. No offense to groupies. Or Miss Pamela, she's cool. But but I'm just saying, like that was my whole thing about getting into music was I'm in the band. And then also this thing that happens that even if you are a marginalized person in any field really, but here in this case music, in a band, how many times you still have to continue to prove that your entire career. I can't tell you how many times I walk into a club we're supposed to be playing that night, and it's all like, who are you? Or doors aren't open, get out, whatever, you know, wait, who's your boyfriend, whatever, you know.
Totally.
Just like, oh my God.
And I think that's sort of an interesting segue to like, we find that a lot of women don't feel comfortable talking about how they're maybe like objectified, or they're not getting paid the same amount, or whatever it is, just
given
because
the same opportunity.
Because of they're afraid to lose their jobs. And I'm wondering if you have any sort of advice maybe for them on how to speak up and feel more comfortable talking about these kinds of things.
Well, I could give a kick down the door. It's a do as I say and not as I do thing. But 'cause I'm a pushover, and I get taken advantage of easily. But I know that our first episode ever was with Danita Sparks from L7. And I know in her interview, she talked a lot about that kind of stuff, where it's like, you know, and they were popular in the 90s, right? They were big hitters, and they had a hard time sometimes getting, I think on Lollapalooza, they couldn't get on, and they were friends with all the other bands, and they were like, whatever. And I think, I don't know if they did this or if they said they're going to do this, but something about flying a plane over Lollapalooza and saying, whose dick do we have to suck to get on Lollapalooza? Something like this. I mean, it's so funny, but you know, just like calling it out. I feel like, you know, obviously representation matters. We need to see ourselves reflected back, so we feel like validated, or our experiences are similar maybe, or you know, and also to feel like you can do it too. Because everyone had to kind of kick down the door themselves a bit, you know, or carve their own path, or at least do something that was carving. But something carvy. But yeah.
So I mean, modeling the way for you was kind of like Kim Gordon. I mean, you mentioned the Slits already. Kim Deal, like polystyrene. Like, we're talking icons on icons on icons. And how were you finding those women? Like, was that filtering down through zine culture and tape trading, or was that something that somebody was like, oh, hey, you should check this out? Or
yeah, well, back then you found out about music, either someone made you a mixtape and gave it to you or sent it to you in the mail, or you were sitting around at someone's house and they're playing records. Oh, have you heard this? Whatever, you know. And Calvin Johnson was a big part of that. He would make mixtapes for people, and he has an amazing record collection. And so he would make like girl fronted mixtapes for a lot of the Riot Grrrls and stuff. You know?
That's so awesome.
But early on, actually, I was pen pals with Rose. Wait, I can't remember. From Rose from Tiger Trump. Okay. And and she lives in Canada. But she would send, it was great. She would send me mixtapes with all sorts of cool girl bands. So she schooled me big time. And she also, I remember her once said drawing out chords on a guitar to show me the
cool.
And drew the hands on the back of the guitar. That was amazing. Stuff like that. But so that's how we had to work hard to find our foremothers and stuff. Yeah. But some of the things I do remember was, of course, decline of Western civilization. So I definitely remember seeing like Exene on that, and Alice Bagg really left the greatest impression on that movie or documentary. And then also I remember like when we started telling these guy friends of ours in Eugene that we're a girl band, or why aren't there more girls, you know, whatever, just like that. And I remember one of the guys, he was kind of a dick, but he would be like, yeah, there's girls, look, here's Avenger, you know, and he showed me the Avengers 7-inch or something, you know, and it's like, okay, yeah, no, I didn't know about that, cool, you know. And so, I mean, or maybe I didn't, I don't know, but that was great. Actually, I just saw the Avengers last night. But yeah, Penelope, great. So but Penelope Houston, it was an early influence, really. But I remember the way that guys would they still had to be like the disseminators of the information. They had to be the one who tells you, the one who schools you, the one who shows you.
Oh, you have that shirt, name 3 songs.
Right.
Yeah.
But he also had to be like, to try to prove us wrong. Like, no, girls aren't discriminated against in punk because look at this example of Penelope Houston. And it's like, okay, that's just one, it doesn't mean that things are equal,
Exactly.
So it's just, and to use it against me, really.
Right.
So I remember the first time I met her years later, and I told her about that. I don't think it came out right. I wasn't trying to be like, oh, the Avengers like were hard on me, or were used against me. But but it was just that way, that backhanded way. I ended up writing a song kind of about that stuff, but how men often feel like they, like, I don't know. Or even I interviewed Liz Fair for us. I did a story on her for a book, an anthology of women. It's called Women Who Rock. But I also did an article in Bust that printed some of the interview. But yeah, she definitely was like, men, like, why were men always trying to show me what's good and tell me what to listen to? And
Right. Yeah.
She had a lot of funny stories about that. It's just like, why do they have to curate my taste or my records or whatever?
Yeah. Well, since we're coming up on our time here, I wanted to, we have some community questions. People were very excited. So Caroline 207 Maine says, is there something you know now that you didn't when you started out?
Oh God, everything.
Right?
I didn't know about registering songs and music for a long time. We were fairly late in the game to register our songs. That would have been nice. Like, you don't even know what's available to you because people don't really tell you, right? Because they want to keep everyone's hoarding the resources,
right.
So anyways, but also I think sometimes I think, like, I don't know. I mean, I know we were pretty politicized and we read a lot and took political classes and stuff, but sometimes I look back at some of the things I wrote or said and was like, wow, that was really idiotic. You just sound dumb, but or you just sound ignorant, and so sometimes I think especially like, it's a hard thing because you're like, oh, women need to speak up more and not be quiet, but at the same time, white women don't need to be the loudest. So it's lots of stuff like that where it's like, okay, you just, why don't you shut up and listen sometimes,
Right. Yeah.
But it's a hard balance because you don't want to shut up in the face of men, but you also whatever, you want to give space and not act like you know everything when you certainly do not. So stuff like that, I guess. There's got to be more. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I feel like I have a lot of punk damage, and that I still sort of seem to be, you're not supposed to make money off your art and all that kind of stuff. So I have a hard time getting paid or asking for what I'm worth or deserve, or even just what other people are getting who are peers or whatever. And I didn't build a path towards any of that, really. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, poor me, I'm super broke and down and out, but I'm just saying, like, I definitely didn't figure that out.
Yeah.
Oh, and the main thing I wish I'd done was I wish I'd kept a journal or a diary the entire time. I have the worst memory. I don't remember hardly anything. And now I want to write a book and do book stuff. And I'm just like, well, I don't know.
That happened, I think.
Yeah. So that's also a thing. Write it all down.
Time to Die, You're Next. Oh, that's a very dark title. Wants to know what has changed in the Riot Grrrl movement from then to now, and that has made space for women and people of color. What do you think has?
Okay. Well, hopefully everything's changed, but we're in a different era and all that. I mean, it's hard for me to say because I don't even know what Riot Grrrl is now. Like, I'm not really that aware of groups and what people are doing. So I see it more as a certain era, maybe even certain place and time.
Totally.
Kind of, I don't know. But at the same time, I don't want to discourage or dismiss people who identify with Riot Grrrl or kind of that kind of thing now and are doing their own things. But I mean, if we're talking about kind of punk rock feminism and stuff, I definitely think it's more diverse now, and I think that that's important. And also, I do think, well, I don't even think it, it's true. Riot Grrrl was very gendered. Now, at the time, we felt like we had to be like, we're up against these like rich white men or whatever.
Totally.
But still, you look back at the way we were kind of framing everything, and it was super gendered. And I think that things are way less gendered now and more like gender fluid. And I think that's great. That's important. And we need to, people are changing the language on that. I mean, and sometimes I find it's hard for me, not totally, but hard for me sometimes to get language and things right because of that being so entrenched in genders in that era. Even though we're fighting the quote unquote good fight, you're just like, well, you don't, we need to stop thinking of things in a binary. So anyways,
no, I mean, that's a great point.
So stuff like that.
Do you think that the Riot Grrrl movement would have happened in the same way if we had access to social media at that point?
Wow. I mean, I'm sure it would be different. I don't know. But I don't know, like, because of course I love the convenience of a lot of things digitally that we have now that we didn't have then. I mean, God, booking tours.
Like not with the typewriter and fax machine.
Right. And calling people
Totally.
long distance, which is really expensive, trying to get them to call you back so you call while you think they're at work, all that. So it's on their dime. I sent postcards to confirm all the dates and everything. It's just ridiculous. And finding out a show's canceled a month later when you get there.
No.
Or even just if you have like a date with someone and they don't show up and you're stood up and you find out later they had something they had to do, an emergency, but you don't find out till you could get home and listen to your answering machine. So like, whatever. So a lot of stuff like that. But anyways, but one thing I did want to say also on kind of the diversity angle too is I think what's important is that from the inception, that the organizers, the people who are starting something, that is diverse, because people don't want to become part of something if they aren't central to it. Like if they weren't the originators, or it's not really their main idea or whatever, or it's not their experience or whatever. So I think that that's important. And I think that's also what's happening. I mean, but I think you have really important groups right now, like, I mean, that are really big, but like Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, that is just so inspiring and so important. I mean, just beyond necessary. So, there's bigger fish to fry and things like that. But I still believe in cultural activism and people having something to say in their art and music too, of course. And I think that, anyways, whatever. Wait, that's not a good answer. Whatever.
No, I mean, you all were so instrumental in laying the groundwork for people to feel like they could do those things. So, I mean, that's definitely in your wake for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, and I also would like to just say that I feel like I owe a lot to Kathleen Hanna, really, who really spearheaded it the most. Yeah. And she was the most, she's just one of those people who never stops. She's always has to be doing something. So she made so much happen, or instigated so much.
Yeah.
And
that's such a good descriptor for the Riot Grrrl movement. Instigators.
And disruptors and things like that. But
yeah.
I love that.
At Kamiki wants to know, how have your values changed from the OG movement transferred to today's social climate, if at all?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's hard because you live with yourself every day, so you don't always see how you've changed. But one thing I said is that gender binary, I think, is like trying to deal with that and not be not think that way and not have things framed that way is something that at least I'm trying to do. And I don't know, and like try not be focused on, I don't know, like feminism just from my own experience or something, you know, and
Yeah.
try to look broader. And I think it's important that the people leading feminist organizations and things like that are not like straight white cis whatever, you know, like so that's also important. And I mean, I'm not saying I was against that back then, but I don't know, just seeing it more, realizing a lot more now.
Yeah.
But I don't know, things are so different. It's like digital, everything's digital now, so I don't know. I mean, sometimes I just thank God that we didn't have social media back then, because you know, we were constantly, you know, ragging on people and whatever and zines. I can't imagine it exponentially, like, oh my God.
Oh yeah,
even for us, I think I'm glad there wasn't social media when we were in high school and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine what the keyboard warriors would have said
Oh my
against the
God.
Riot Grrrl movement, you know, just like that boys club versus the girls club, and like you guys taking on and playing a show that you like maybe didn't have the chops to play initially, but somebody was like, hey, do this thing, and you guys were bold enough to do it. But
Yeah.
you know, it's so easy to pile on behind a keyboard that I feel like that was such a microcosm of that time too, that it was just like, no, we're doing this thing, we're all fired up and it's awesome. And
well, also fear of whatever, because I even think about posting things sometimes that I don't know what it is, just anything, and I think twice about it, right? Because it's going out to so many more people.
Of course.
Whereas when we were making these zines, you just scribble it out and, you know, photocopy it, you know,
100 times.
Yeah, with a stolen Kinko's card or whatever.
Did you save any of those?
Oh, I still think I have my Kinko's cards. I even had one of those blocks with the number counter on it somewhere. But I love those. But yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I think that there is something about that extreme access to everyone and everything all at once, and like social media, that exponential audience or whatever, that might make people a little bit more fearful of expressing themselves. I think it would have done that for me, and I don't know if I would have started a band. I mean, I had to leave Olympia to even think that I might be able to start a band. It's definitely in Olympia, I was probably even too afraid of what scenesters there would think of me. You know?
I mean, that was the scene of the scenes in the 90s for sure. Like,
well, when I started, it wasn't really yet. But maybe sort of. Well, one thing is Olympia was important because Seattle had these city ordinances that were shutting all the venues down and everything. Like you couldn't dance if you're not 21 or whatever, and definitely couldn't. Yeah. Anyway, so all ages thing was super screwed in Seattle. So people, usually we met in the middle in Tacoma. There was this great place, Community World Theater. Yeah. Nico Case worked the door. Yeah, it was great. That was mostly in the late 80s. But I'm sure into the 90s too, I think. I don't know. But yeah, but a lot of things had to happen in Olympia and Tacoma because Seattle was often shut down.
So. Yeah, I mean, and it's those are little building blocks that I think sometimes people don't realize, right? It's that there was these weird political things that all kind of lined up in the right ways to put all of these like-minded people together in the right way to just kind of nudge them towards doing this amazing thing. So,
and you had to show up. So much of a scene is just the hang and talking outside the venue or on the sidewalk or whatever, you know, or at parties, whatever. So I think that was also important too. Like, I think people still want to go out and meet up in person, of course, but I think things were so much more regional back then. Music and scenes, and especially the Northwest, it was very sleepy back then, and you didn't have national acts coming through very often. People find that hard to believe, but no. So you know, your heroes are your hometown heroes, you know.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, one more question and then we'll ask our final one, but the one beforehand is from Michelle Kaufman. She wants to know what your first album on vinyl was.
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, probably one of the first records I bought as an adult, with my own money, probably was late. I don't really know, but I know that when I moved to Eugene to go to college, there was a great record store there. I can't remember what it was called, but I bought 2 records, and I maybe at the same time, I'm not sure, but I bought the Vaseline's EP that's pink. It's got like Dying for It, Jesus Don't Want Me for a Sunbeam, Molly's Lips, and what else on there? Anyways, and I bought that, and then I also bought the Shop Assistants. So wow, both bands I think are from Edinburgh, Scotland. But the Shop Assistants, I bought that album, their first album, I guess, or whatever. Maybe it's their only album, I don't know. And both of those records I still have and I love. And yeah, the Vaseline's record, Kurt Cobain was always trying to get off of me. He knew I had it, and it was hard to get, I guess. But yeah, I can't tell you how many of his friends were like, Kurt really wants that. And I was like, well, too bad.
Tell him to go buy it.
I know. I want it more. I mean, this was early on. I don't think they were that big yet, but whatever. Anyways. But yeah, I still have it.
So to end our incredible conversation, we ask the impossible question that is, if it's worse than the desert island question, in my opinion, and that's why we came up with it. If you were to make one 7-inch record and you could put anything on the A side and anything on the B side, and it is a custom bootleg, what would that 7-inch record be?
Oh, do you mean like with which artist or something like that?
Mm-hmm. What artist, what song? Yeah. I know, it's the hardest question of all time.
Well, probably Patsy Cline would have to be on one side.
Oh, here we go.
Because I could just listen to her sing the shit out of anything. But but some song that she's never done before, maybe
some deep
different.
cut.
Yeah, something. I was about to name a song, but I think she did do a cover of that. But anyways, I don't know. Like maybe like it's, who knows? Maybe Patsy Cline on one side and Linda Ronstadt on the other. I don't know.
Oh, nice. I mean that is iconic. That is iconic. I'm here for it. That's incredible.
Awesome. Well, this has been so great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. I can't
Thanks
tell you how
me.
rad it is to have you on here.
I hope I came across okay and didn't bum anyone out. But yeah,
no way,
not at all.
Quite the opposite. I feel like people will be more fired up in the way that they should be. Always. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what we're after on our podcast and in our organization and our daily lives. That's what we're trying to do, is spearhead it, make it better, right?
Yeah.
So.
Carry it on.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to be talking also to Canadians, and
Yay!
I'm sure my sister Cindy Wolfe and her hubby boyfriend Reg Harkema, they're the documentary film people. But anyways, they're Canadian, and they'll probably listen to this too. So.
Awesome.
Well, if your twin sister wants to put out a record, we'll figure it out.
Awesome. Yeah, I really think she should. Yeah. So
yeah, we can make it happen. That's wicked.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you.
Great rest of your night. Yeah.
Yeah, super appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Women in Vinyl podcast. You can join our ever-growing list of sponsors: other record labels, Selector, Couple Design, Eargasm, Groove Washer, Glowtronics, New Gen Audio, and Vinyl Revolution Record Show. And thanks for sponsoring the show. Hey, as always, you can join our conversation on Instagram or send us a note at media@womeninvinyl.com. Clock us. Send us info. If you have a question, we got the answer, or we'll find it. We won't lie to you. And check out womeninvinyl.com for past episodes, the store, the job board, and the library of resources. Don't forget to like and subscribe and give us a review on your favorite podcast delivery method. You can also contribute to furthering our mission at patreon.com/womeninvinyl. Hey, guess what? This episode, 45 minutes. You know there was more. You want more? You get more. Go to patreon.com and you can get more. And you'll find all the B-sides, the deep cuts, and the amazing extras, including longer episodes, and contribute to the creation of scholarships and educational opportunities to further the demystification, the infiltration of more women and non-binary identifying humans into the vinyl making space, decreasing those turnaround times every week. Yeah, we love your records. We want you to love them too. womeninvinyl.com.
This episode has been brought to you by Women in Vinyl and Red Spade Records. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, and you can always contact us directly by visiting www.womeninvinyl.com.